Are you building a coding portfolio and you're wondering, is my project good enough? Let me give you an overly simplistic but very easy to check rule of thumb that works surprisingly well. And that is, rarely will you build an interesting or useful app in less than 100 commits. And I'll give you 4 tips about how to address that, okay? So the first tip is your project might be genuinely simple, and that's okay. You don't need a bunch of complicated projects. In fact, you shouldn't overcomplicate your project. If you've built the tool, it does the thing, and you want to make another more substantive project, the right approach is to move on to a new project and come up with a different idea. In many cases, a simple project might be front end only, okay? An interesting, more complicated project might be full stack, okay? The second consideration is maybe you are not making small enough commits. So maybe you have a wicked awesome app and you did it in 30 commits and it's full stack and everything. You want to make a practice of breaking those commits down further. That's the second tip. The third tip is, yes, you can have simple projects in your portfolio, but you should have at least one awesome project. And so I think a general rule of thumb is that you want three or four projects in your portfolio. And so I typically start with a very basic one and then move on to full stack and then do a capstone. And the capstone should be the awesome one. You should be able to show growth from the simple one to the capstone. They don't all need to be over 100 commits, but that third one, you should try to make it genuinely interesting, useful, awesome. And then here's the fourth tip. You are focused on the core features and not on the details. And this is what separates a basic app from an awesome app. Give some extra time to the design, the look and feel, the theme, personalize it, okay? You'll get a bunch of commits out of that. Customize the content. Don't make a cookie cutter home. Don't make a cookie cutter blog with lorem ipsum. Put real content in there. In your blog, put a real blog article from you. You'll get a bunch of commits out of that. Document it. Update the README. You're probably sleeping on your README. That's why you don't have commits. At the end of the day, if you have a full stack app that's actually deployed, that's another one. You might be missing some commits because you think everyone's going to clone your repo and run it locally. They won't. You should have a publicly deployed, accessible working version of the awesome one. It doesn't need to be all your projects. Once you have a full stack app, it's well documented, it has some thought put into the theme and design. It doesn't need to be like the Mona Lisa, right? We're not all artists, we're programmers. The fact that you put effort there and that you can speak about what you did and why it matters is much more important from a programming perspective than whether it's actually visually appealing, assuming that you're not applying to a designer role. You want to be able to implement a theme. If you pick the wrong colors, that's not a big deal. But if you've done all these things, you've personalized it, you've customized it, it's full stack, it's usable, it runs locally, it runs in an environment, it's going to be really hard to build an app like that isn't 100 commits, unless you're making your commits way too big. Hope this helps. Hope that's a good rule of thumb about how to make an awesome standout project, and then also your whole portfolio. You only really need one of these to get that first job. If you build one of these, send it to me. I'd love to take a look.